All right. Welcome back to Big B's Sports Talk Podcast. Man, a lot to go through and talk about, a lot of different items, different topics. I've been getting a few emails about certain opinions, and, we don't shy away from, on the podcast here, we don't shy away from the tough ones. And today we're going to talk about the tough one. Transgender in sports. So for me, it's not difficult. I just think it's not a difficult thing for me to talk about. It's not a difficult decision for me as far as which way I stand on it. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it. A lot of people will shy away because you get labeled if you believe one way or another. To me, this is just about common sense. So let's dive into that a little bit. What I mean as far as common sense is, look, if you're born a male, you have to compete against other males. It's just that simple for me. And the reason that it's that simple is not fair. There's right and wrong. There's being insensitive and sensitive. But this is just a right and wrong thing. This is about being fair. You can't, for instance, I'm not a sexist because I say that my wife is not as strong as I am. That doesn't make me a sexist. So to say that that a woman isn't as strong as you, isn't you being sexist? Physically. Now, mentally, I think pretty much all women are stronger than men. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. That's just the way that it is. But physically, it's just the way that men and women are built. So it doesn't make me or anybody else out there, it doesn't make you a sexist or anything to say that your wife or your sister or your mother or your friend isn't as strong as you if you're male. Doesn't mean that. It's just science. It's just the way that women are built and females are built. That's just the way that it is. Now, as far as digging into competing, I mean, let's just be honest. Let's talk about it. When I look at the headlines, and they're littered, they are just littered all over the place now. It seems to be now, where a male is competing as female in a female sport and dominating it and breaking records. I mean, come on, people. What are we doing? Seriously, what are we doing? Let's take a bat. Let's take it all the way down and really try to break it down. The problem with it is, for instance, in male sports, there are divisions. In college sports, there are divisions. There is the top level. Let's just take football. There is the FBS. Then there's the FCS. Then there's Division II, Division III, NAIA. Okay? Now, why is that? Well, one, I mean, the school doesn't want to spend as much, or doesn't have the resources to be able to spend on football or other sports that bigger universities have. Some of that is the size of the university, but some of it is they just don't have the resources. Okay, fair enough. But it also had a lot to do with, we want to have this sport, but everybody can't play Division I football. Why? Because they're not good enough. And again, that doesn't make me a bully, an elitist, or anything to say that a guy that's playing Division II football can't play at Alabama. It just means he doesn't have that ability. That's okay to say. That's okay. And it's the truth. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, life in general is built of people that have certain, for instance, I can't be a rocket scientist. Rocket scientists are smarter than me. Okay. I mean, I don't feel bad about that. So, and that same rocket scientist, maybe he played Division 4 or Division 3 football. So we need to, with these certain, everybody isn't a bully. Everybody isn't offending somebody just by saying something. A lot of that goes on. A lot of it happens anyway. But let's not manufacture it, per se. There's no reason to manufacture hatred or a rule. There's no reason to manufacture that in this case, especially. Okay? There's divisions for a reason because of ability. Okay? How does that correlate? Well, why, if you're a man, I mean, for instance, in the WNBA, there are no men playing. And they're not gonna, because they're not supposed to. I'm not saying women aren't good, but you cannot have a man playing in that. Now, look, I am a person, and people that know me, and I know a lot of people don't, but if you know me, I've had some tragedies in my life that, especially with my brother passing away, that at a young age, you do whatever makes you happy. You do whatever makes you happy. And I am going to be your biggest fan no matter what that happy is. And if your happy is, you know what, I'm a guy, but inside I 100% feel that I'm a female, by all means, and I mean it, by all means, you go be you. You go be you. That doesn't have anything to do with me or anybody else. That is what and that's what's going to make you happy and get you through the day and put a smile on your face. Damn it, you need to do it. Because we're not promised tomorrow by anybody, and who wants to live a life where you're not happy? I know I don't. I'm not going to, and I don't live that way. There were a lot of years that I did. So one of the reasons I started doing podcasts is because I love talking about sports, and I'm going to do it. So if that's what makes you happy, by all means, you need to do that. You need to do that. On the flip side, there are consequences for every single thing that we do. Everything that we do has a consequence. In life, that's just the way life works. Whether the consequence is good or bad. Whether it's good or it's bad. But there is a consequence. So, in this life, if you're male, but inside you feel like you're female, and you choose to live your life that way, that is great. You can't compete in female sports. It's not physically fair. The reason is because it's a physical act, okay? Not a mental act. If you want to get a job as a teacher or as an insurance agent or a rocket scientist, then by all means, you do that. Because there's no correlation, like I said, that mentally, you don't take a step back to anybody. Women aren't going to take a step back to a man mentally. Physically, they do. So you can't just eliminate that and say, well, it doesn't matter. As long as whatever you feel like today, that's what you're going to be. So now, I'll be the first to admit, I am not the most well-versed and that's not my thing. I'm not the most well-versed in transgender or pronouns or whatever. That's not my thing. I don't know about it, so I don't talk about it. It's kind of like soccer. I don't know about soccer, and I'm not going to talk about soccer. Okay? So I don't want to get into the in-depth of why somebody feels a certain way and what they call themselves and, you know, and I don't want to get into that, okay, because that's not being fair. And I'm about fair. You know, so talking to somebody about what they do or why they do it and what they call themselves, I'm not into that. It's not my thing. It's not my business. But when you're talking about men and women in sports, well, then that becomes my business. You know, and I just don't see how anybody can think that it's fair at all to both sides. How it's fair. For instance, I mean, if that's the case, then why don't you just let, I mean, a guy or kid in high school who he's a guy, let him run in the women's. Why separate men and women if it's not doesn't matter? Why separate it? Why have a men's meet and a women's meet? Why have a men's basketball team and a women's basketball team? I mean, why do you do that? I mean, you can't realistically come up with reasons on why that's done if you're saying that it doesn't matter. It does matter. It does matter a lot. And you're foolish if you don't believe that it does. And it's being selfish is what it is. And I'm not afraid to say it. You're being selfish. Look, like I mentioned before, there are consequences. Your consequence is if you're a male, but you feel like you live your life as female, you can't compete in female sports, though. That's the consequence. Sorry. That's just the way that it is. You want to compete? Compete against other men. Compete against other men. There are just certain things in this world that, for instance, I am black. I can't just wake up tomorrow and say, you know what? I'm going to be white today. Doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. I don't get that choice, is what I'm saying. You just don't get the choice to compete against women if you're male. You absolutely shouldn't. It runs down what women have worked extremely hard to build, and that's respect. Women women battle on a daily basis for respect because this is a man's world. It is. It's a male-dominated world. And women have carved their niche out and are beaten back against certain stereotypes and have fought to get the respect that they have, and they have it. But when we allow this, I mean, you're basically just spitting in the face of everything that women have done. And that's just how I feel about it. One thing to take a dive into, and this will probably be a separate podcast altogether, you look at Title IX. Title IX is designed for women to have a fair shake at the collegiate level. It's demanded, it's a law. And basically, we would be getting rid of that altogether. There will be people that argue to get rid of Title IX if we allow this to happen. I don't see how people can't see that, because it wouldn't have to go away. I mean, it will. It will have to go away. Then what? How many women's sports do you think are going to stick around without Title IX? Title IX has its flaws because Title IX should not include football at all, because you're taking away the opportunity of other male sports based on the number of scholarships that you give to football, which you know at a top tier university is going to be 85 every year, to give it to others when this football funds the rest of the other sports. Without football, these sports don't exist. So it's nonsense to have football and count all 85 scholarships versus the total number of scholarships that men can have. That's just insanity. It's literal insanity and stupidity. I mean, you can't count the funding and then take away from just half of the. That's just stupid. That's just dumb. Just dumb. But it's done. But that would go away. That would literally go away because there would be no reason to have it. There would be no reason. And I know Title IX, it encompasses a lot of other things. I'm not saying that it does or that it doesn't. I get that part of it. But the main reason that it's there is so that women get the same opportunities as men do in sports, and they should. And you're taking this away from them, which I think is absolutely asinine. Like I said, there's consequences to everything that we do. You're just not going to be able to compete with women. I mean, I saw a story where a woman broke a weightlifting record, shattered it. But he was male. Living their life as a female, goes to weightlifting and shatters the record. Now, I'm not going to go into what they looked like because bodybuilders kind of look different than the normal, not kind of, they look different than every single human being on earth. That's just what they're going to look like. But you cannot sit there with a straight face and tell me that there is not a physical advantage in a weightlifting contest. I mean, come on. What are we doing? What are we talking about? Are we even trying to be fair? Are we even trying? You know, it just can't be allowed. And again, I want to stress this. I want to hammer this point in. It does not make you a sexist, a bully, transphobe, homo. It doesn't make you any of those things to say that. It doesn't make you any of those things. Because if you see somebody on the street and you treat them with respect, that's all anybody's ever asking for. Well, what does that have to do with whether you should be able to compete in a sport of the opposite sex? How does that correlate? To me, it doesn't. And I think if we lived in a world where we just common sense came into play a lot more, we would be a lot better off, especially in sports. In this case, absolutely. You just can't have it. Again, I go back to the right and wrong, fair and not fair. It's not fair to have a male living their life as female competing against other females. That isn't fair. Doesn't mean that you have to. Now, the problem, I guess, that goes along with it, I'm sorry to come back or cut off, but the problem with it is that people go too far. People will want to bash them and denigrate them and all these other things. Well, we can't have that. And that, again, goes without saying. You can't have that. People disrespecting somebody over how they choose to live their life. Now, I'm not part of that at all. So I want to make sure people are clear. I don't agree with that at all. Like I said, we're on this earth for a limited amount of time. Only God knows when that's going to be. Live your life and be happy. And everybody should treat you with the same amount of respect that you want yourself to be treated with, and keep it moving. But again, there are consequences to every action that we do. I eat a lot, so I'm fat. Okay? I get that. Do I need to lose weight? Absolutely. It's going to be difficult, but I'm trying. Okay. But that doesn't mean I still don't look the way that I do. You just can't compete in a sport when you have a fit. Now, again, It just goes back to divisions. Divisions in sports exist for a reason. You can say what you want, but they're there. They are there. I live in Indiana, or grew up in Indiana, just across the river from Louisville. I can't explain this part any better. I literally live closer, my mother's house is closer to downtown Louisville than my aunt's house was when we were growing up. So the area of Louisville and Kentucky, that area, or Louisville, Kentucky, and Indiana, it is basketball crazy. Louisville is like the hotbed of college basketball. I know people want to talk about Tobacco Road. Louisville is the center. The University of Louisville is there. 65, 70 miles down the road to the east, southeast is Kentucky. The University of Kentucky, Lexington. A horrible place, one of the worst places on earth, but that's, I apologize. I digress. From Louisville, going north, about an hour and 30 minutes, just happens to be the University of Indiana. Now, growing up, all three were relevant. Now, I mean, I try to get this across to IU fans now that IU is not relevant at this particular moment and haven't been for a long time, and they want to fight back on it, but IU is what it is. Again, I digress. But those are three schools, gigantic universities, right there within, I mean, from Bloomington to Kentucky, let's call it 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours. You got three gigantic universities. Okay? Now follow me. The difference is that though they are all there, the Indiana basketball tournament was one class. And it was the best high school tournament in the country. And there's no debating that. I know I'm from Indiana. There's no debating it. It was one class. There was one champion. I happened to be part of a team that won that in 1993. The toughest game wasn't the state championship. Not to me, it wasn't. Now, I know that team may have been a little better that we played for the state championship. But the toughest team that we played was a school called White River Valley. I went to Jeffersonville High School. We had 2,300 kids. White River Valley had 314. 314 versus 2,300. But we won the game by 2 points. They competed. They had some guys that played Division I basketball. Imagine that. But they were good. They were able to compete. Right across the river in Kentucky, they have one class, but they also had a small state championship. And then they've broken into divisions. Indiana has broken into divisions. It's not the same. Why do they do that? To be able to compete. They want the little guys, the little schools, the small schools to compete. Do I think it's a mistake? Absolutely. Has it ruined the tournament? Absolutely. But they did it. Okay, fine. The reason is because they wanted all these smaller schools to be able to say they had an opportunity to win because they couldn't beat the bigger schools. Well, fine. There's division. Gender in sports, same thing. There's male and female sports. They didn't just have one tournament with one team for each school. They had a girls and a boys team. And that is, to me, that's the perfect analogy right there. Indiana had the greatest high school tournament ever. Kentucky did not. And they're right next to each other. You separated it by class. You separated it because you didn't think one had the same ability. I'm not saying that, and again, saying that somebody has more ability than somebody else doesn't make you a sexist, racist, homophobe. It doesn't make you anything. It just means somebody's better than the other person. But that doesn't mean that I get to change who I compete against altogether. Doesn't mean that. And for some that say that it does, you're wrong. You're just wrong. Some things in life are not going to work out in your favor. We have become a society that doesn't believe that so much, that everything has to work. I'm not saying you can't be criticized, but you should. Because you should. I mean, nobody does anything perfect every time. But we've become this society that you have to do things, that it's all perfect and everybody gets a shot. And no. And I know it's an old adage that people have come up with, these participation. No participation trophies. You don't get to do it. I'm sorry. It's not fair. And it's not that it's not fair to you. It's not fair to the women that are competing. Again, just basically scrap the respect that they have just damn near died to get. I mean, you're just spitting on it. And that, to me, that's pathetic. I don't like it. We need to be better at it. Just my opinion. Usually I give my opinion in kind of a lighthearted respect, but I think today needed to be a little bit more serious because it's a serious topic. It's a serious issue. So I thank you guys for tuning in and listening. The website's getting a little bit bigger. And when I say bigger, just more people subscribing, more people tuning in, going there. I appreciate all of that. We try to track those things, and people have been showing up and checking out the podcasts and the blogs that we have going on. I appreciate all of that. Again, the podcast is everywhere that you get your podcasts. Big B Sports Talk Podcast. Again, I'm still wondering about the name. I like it, but I may shorten it a little. We'll see. Again, come to the website. It's at www.koolaidsports.com. That's Kool-Aid with the C. COOLAID sports.com. I appreciate you guys coming out. Like I said, we've got blogs. We've got podcasts. We're going to be coming out with more podcasts, just a lot of content to kind of fill, your sports appetite. So just keep showing up. I know we're small, but we're getting bigger. We're pushing it. Spread the word, pass the word, leave comments, leave suggestions. We're open to all of it. Again, as I mentioned before, criticism is welcome. Criticism is welcome. So just keep tuning in. We'll keep pushing them out. I appreciate all your support. Thank you.